poor infrastructure and limited health resources. They cannot afford to be further challenged. We are concerned about escalating hostilities in the West Bank, as well as in southern Lebanon, near the borders with Israel, which are leading to even more loss of life, injury, displacement, and damages to health infrastructure. The current catastrophic situation, if not immediately halted, has the potential to further destabilize public health and place countless more lives at risk. Only an immediate ceasefire can ultimately stop the suffering and prevent the health security of the entire region from further spiraling downwards. I thank you, Madam Chair. Back to you.
Thank you, Regional Director. If there are no further requests for the floor, we shall now consider the draft resolution contained in document EB SS/7 conf/1.
Apologies, Your Excellency. Sorry, I just totally forgotten. Sorry to come back again.
Okay.
If you don't mind, we have Rick Bibakorn, who is our leader, WHO, WR in Palestine. If you don't mind, just for a few minutes to hear him.
Yeah, please go ahead, Dr. Rick.
So, yeah, Dr.
Yes.
Rick, please go ahead. You have the floor now.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed. Proceed, Dr. Rick.
Hello?
Yes, please proceed. We can hear you.
Yeah, this is greeting. Okay. Thank you very much. Greetings from Gaza. I know you've heard a lot today and got a lot of details and statistics, but let me share you a little bit about our mission yesterday. WHO led a mission to Al-Ahli Arabia Hospital, the so-called Baptist hospital in Gaza City, to deliver essential medical and trauma supplies, essential drugs, one truck full. Also to do a quick assessment on key hospital, a quick assessment with the key hospital staff, and as a third point, to transfer 19 critical patients, including their accompagnants, their family. This was a very high-risk mission, and it became a necessary, more high risk actually during the day. Let me share with you some information. Except in Gaza City, and coming there every month, 1 week, Gaza City has changed beyond belief. I mean, it's a utter devastation. I've never seen this in my life before. It's like a wasteland. There were still many people, children, old men, women around. And when we arrived at the hospitals, people were very happy to see us. The Al-Ahli Hospital is normally a small hospital, 40-bed hospital. Currently, it has patients literally everywhere, in every corner, and more than 250 patients in all the wards, but also in the library, in the old OT ward, and even in the church, crowded with patients on the floor, on stretchers, not on stretchers, on chairs. I've never seen this in my life, and when we talked to the staff, to Dr. Fadel, he's the hospital director, orthopedic surgeon, and to Dr. Mohamed Radwan, he's a general surgeon who actually came from another hospital, Kamal Adwan, which had to leave and assist us there. They raised a couple of points. I mean, because they don't have, for example, vascular surgeons, they have to do an enormous amount of amputations. I saw multiple trauma cases, donkey carts and horse carts coming into the hospital grounds, carrying dead bodies or carrying wounded people covered in blood. There's no staff to assist. And when I
Dr. Richard,
make this quick assessment. And I asked,
do you hear me, Dr. Richard?
the hospital director what is needed. We get the same answers everywhere. Fuel, key medical supplies, and specifically, yes. Yes.
Thank you. Can you please wrap up, Dr. Richard?
Supplies, oxygen, food and water for patients and staff. Last thing I want to say, having worked for more than 7.5 years in Afghanistan, I've seen some grim situation. I've never seen this before. We need to continue to assist. We will do the next mission tomorrow. WHO is here to stay and deliver, not for the short term, but also for the long term. We have to think on recovery. We have a plan. Funds are needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Richard. If there's no further requests for the floor, we shall now consider the draft resolution contained in document EB SS/7 conf/1 Rev 1. Is the board ready to adopt the resolution contained in document EB SS/7/conf/1 revision 1? I see no objection. The resolution is adopted by consensus. I understand that there have been some requests by some board members for a brief explanation of position. We will turn to that now. I will now give the floor to the United States of America, followed by the Syrian Arab Republic. You each have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, as we said in our statement earlier, we are heartbroken by the images out of Gaza and the deaths of many thousands of civilians, including women and children. With partners throughout the region and across the globe, the United States has been leading efforts to increase the flow of life-saving assistance to civilians in Gaza. We are grateful for the work of WHO and other humanitarian partners, and we grieve the loss of UN staff and their families. The United States is grateful for the efforts of so many members of the Executive Board who worked to reach a consensus text. We agreed not to block consensus on the text, but we must be explicit about our significant reservations. The United States does not agree with the language in preambulatory paragraph 8 and disassociates from it. As we expressed at the Security Council on Friday, calls for a ceasefire are not only unrealistic, but dangerous. For a ceasefire would simply leave Hamas in place, able to regroup and repeat what it did on October 7th. Hamas does not dispute this. A few days ago, a senior Hamas official again stated the group intends to repeat the vile acts of October 7th again and again and again. The United States also does not agree with the language in operative paragraph 2 and disassociates from it. While the United States continues to underscore the imperative of making available medicine and medical equipment to civilian populations and recognizes that certain relevant obligations under international humanitarian law could apply in certain circumstances, there is no general international humanitarian law or international human rights law obligation to ensure the supply and replenishment of medicine and medical equipment. As a point of clarification, the United States does not recognize the terminology of occupied Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem. Rather, sovereignty issues need to be negotiated between the two parties going forward. Additionally, the United States considers this resolution and the focus of our discussions today to apply solely to the current situation in Gaza. No part of this resolution, including references to obligations under international humanitarian law, should be understood to alter the current state of conventional or customary international law or create rights or obligations under international law. The United States regrets the lack of balance in the resolution and notable weaknesses in the text. We continue to condemn the October 7th terrorist attack by Hamas against Israel and the taking of hostages. The text does not even mention that Hamas's attack killed over 1,200 people, women, children, and the elderly, or the acts of sexual violence Hamas has perpetrated. It doesn't mention the over 200 hostages were taken, people of many nationalities, including infants and the elderly, and that many continue to be held by Hamas. It also fails to condemn Hamas's documented practice of deliberately sheltering themselves among civilians, including inside residential buildings, hospitals, and schools, deliberately increasing the likelihood of civilian casualties when terrorist military targets are struck. We reiterate that humanitarian pauses should be accompanied by the unconditional release of all remaining hostages still held by Hamas, and expect that in the interim, the hostages' humanitarian needs, including medical care, must be met. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States of America. Now give the floor to the Syrian Arab Republic, followed by Canada.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. لا مكان آمن في غزة. عبارة كثيرا ما نسمعها في ظل العدوان الإسرائيلي الهمجي على الشعب الفلسطيني، ولكنها لم تعد تفي بالغرض لوصف الواقع. فكل مكان في غزة بات مكانا للمجازر بحق المدنيين، وكل بقعة في غزة أضحت مكانا للموت والدمار والرعب. كل بيت سكني وكل مستشفى ومدرسة ومخيم لاجئين هو هدف محضر مسبقا. لا فرق إن كنت طفلا أو امرأة أو مسنا، لا فرق إن كنت طبيبا أو مسعفا أو عاملا إنسانيا، فكل شيء هو هدف متعمد لآلة الإجرام الإسرائيلية التي تتبع سياسة الأرض المحروقة. أما احترام القانون وميثاق الأمم المتحدة فللأسف لا ينطبق هنا بالنسبة للبعض، ويبقى مجرد شعارا أو أداة لاستهداف دول بعينها. لن أذكر الأعداد المروعة وغير المسبوقة للضحايا المستشفيات، فقد بات الجميع يعرفها، ولكن لا بد لي من التعبير عن استنكارنا الشديد لمواقف بعض الحكومات التي رغم كل ذلك ما زالت تمعن في لا أخلاقيتها ولا إنسانيتها من خلال تقديمها دعما أعمى لإسرائيل وإعطائها تفويضا وضوءا أخضرا لاستمرار كل هذه الجرائم. إن سوريا تطالب بالتدخل العاجل لإلزام الاحتلال الإسرائيلي بوقف هذا العدوان فورا وتوفير الحماية للشعب الفلسطيني وللمرافق والكوادر الطبية وضمان تدفق الإمدادات والمعدات الطبية بشكل كامل ومستدام والوصول دون عوائق للعاملين في المجال الطبي والإنساني وفقا للقانون الدولي الإنساني. السيد الرئيس، لذلك انضمت سوريا إلى توافق الآراء حول مشروع القرار المطروح أمامنا، رغم أننا نؤمن أنه كان يمكن أن يكون أكثر وضوحاً وتجسيداً لحجم العدوان الإسرائيلي وسبل التعامل مع نتائجه الكارثية، ورغم تحفظنا على أي إشارة يمكن أن تساوي بين الضحية والجلاد، فبالنسبة لسوريا ما يجري هو عدوان إسرائيلي همجي، وهو احتلال توسعي يرتكب الجرائم الجسيمة والممنهجة وينتهك كل حقوق الإنسان على مدى عقود وحتى الآن، وليس نزاعاً بين الطرفين. أرجو أن يتم تسجيل
Shukran, Surya. I now give the floor to Canada, followed by Australia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate the willingness of all parties to demonstrate flexibility and reach a consensus on this resolution today, which affirms the importance of protecting civilians, including aid and healthcare workers, as well as healthcare facilities in all situations of armed conflict. As we said in our statement earlier today, Canada remains deeply concerned by the humanitarian situation in Gaza and its impact on civilians, particularly on civilian health, which is worsening by the day. For this reason, Canada joined consensus on the revised draft resolution. However, Canada sees this as a compromise resolution, which could have gone further. We would have preferred additional language to be included to acknowledge the role of Hamas in the conflict, its taking of hostages, and its use of human shields. Canada continues to call for the immediate release of those being held hostage and demands that they be treated humanely in accordance with international law. Canada remains committed to the goal of comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East, including the creation of a Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. I now give the floor to Australia, followed by Slovenia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Australia appreciates the spirit of cooperation which has allowed WHO's Executive Board to come together to support this resolution. Australia is gravely concerned about the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. Human suffering is widespread and unacceptable. The world has witnessed a harrowing number of civilian deaths, including children. This must not continue. We are gravely concerned by the impact on hospitals, health facilities and health workers. Australia again calls for safe, unimpeded and sustained humanitarian access in Gaza and safe passage for civilians. We are also deeply concerned by the deaths of UN staff, including WHO staff in this conflict. We commend the WHO for its tireless efforts in responding to this emergency. While we have been prioritising cooperation in the interests of civilians and health workers, we do take issue with the fact that the resolution did not make specific reference to the 7 October attack perpetrated on innocent Israeli civilians by the terrorist group Hamas. The attack was a catalyst for the current devastating situation in the occupied Palestinian territories and Israel. It also does not address that Hamas continues to detain hostages. Australia continues to call for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. We can affirm Israel's right to defend itself while also saying that the way it does so matters. It matters for innocent civilians who should not pay for the horrors perpetrated by Hamas, and it matters for Israel's ongoing security, which would face grave threats if conflict were to spill over across the region. Australia urges all parties to exercise restraint and respect international humanitarian law. Health workers, civilians and civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, must be protected. Practical steps must be taken as soon as possible to find an enduring solution to the conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. I now give the floor to Slovenia, followed by France.
Thank you, Chair. Today, we should be proud of the constructive engagement of us all, bearing in mind throughout our discussion immense suffering of the civilians and the gravity of destruction of the health system in Gaza. Not only we have adopted the resolution in consensus, but many of us are also co-sponsoring it. This, we believe, is a huge success and the demonstration that health for all is and will keep being a global value, and that it is a moral standard for all of us to safeguard health systems in all the circumstances, including in war conflicts. We are reinstituting the norm that has been violated not only in Gaza, but in over 50 other war conflicts around the globe. Now we have to implement, first by respecting what we have just agreed upon, and second by supporting fully WHO Secretariat in their endeavours to ensure urgent access to healthcare and coordinate activities in this regard on the ground. We would like to ask Secretariat to tell us where are the gaps for implementation, so that we would understand better how to support our organization and scale up humanitarian health action. Thinking of tomorrow, which is maybe difficult right now, we also have to plan for recovery, as said by the WHO colleague reporting just before from regional office. Thank you.
Thank you, Slovenia. I now give the floor to France, followed by Afghanistan.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Madame la Présidente, tout d'abord, ma délégation remercie les délégations qui, dans la conduite de nos discussions, ont rendu le consensus possible. Gravement préoccupée par la tragédie humanitaire et sanitaire à Gaza, la France a soutenu la convocation de cette session extraordinaire et elle s'est prononcée en faveur de cette résolution. Elle plaide pour une nouvelle trêve humanitaire, immédiate et durable, qui doit conduire à un cessez-le-feu pérenne. Le secrétaire général des Nations Unies a tiré l'alarme, entendons son appel. La communauté internationale doit se prononcer de façon exhaustive. Comme le souligne la résolution, l'obligation de protéger les civils et les infrastructures civiles s'impose à tous. Israël a le droit de se défendre. Elle a le devoir de le faire dans le strict respect du droit international humanitaire. Le Hamas doit cesser ses activités terroristes et autres violations massives du droit international dont les Palestiniens sont eux aussi les victimes. Les attaques terroristes et les prises d'otages du 7 octobre auraient dû être condamnées dans ce texte. Nous appelons à la libération immédiate et sans condition de tous les otages, à la garantie de leur sécurité, de leur santé, de leur bien-être et d'un traitement humain. Des enquêtes devront être ouvertes sur les allégations de violences sexuelles commises à l'encontre des femmes. Ceci aussi aurait dû figurer dans ce texte. Cette résolution est un appel à la mobilisation et à l'action humanitaire, en appui à l'OMS et aux partenaires humanitaires pour le bien des populations civiles. La France intensifiera ses efforts avec ses partenaires. Agissons et que cette tragédie donne à la communauté internationale, aussi bien qu'aux Israéliens et aux Palestiniens, la force de restaurer un horizon politique, celui de deux États vivant en paix et en sécurité. Je vous remercie.
Merci, la France. I now give the floor to Afghanistan, followed by Rwanda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I come from the most devastated context, one of the most devastated contexts in the world. I was born in conflict, I was raised in conflict, and I worked in conflict. I can not only understand, I can feel, and I have lived with what does rocket shell mean? What does explosion mean? What does it mean when you see a 2-year child being fallen apart by an explosion? What does it mean for a mother or father when their children has nothing to eat and there is no opportunity to go out, no safety? Being a doctor in Afghanistan, I can tell you what does it mean for a doctor having tens of people injured around him with no facilities to serve and to help. I can tell you stories and stories. With that feeling, with that experience, I'm here today to thank and appreciate the efforts made by the EBA members today, putting aside their political disagreements and coming up with a consensus in support of this resolution. The pathway, the way that couldn't be followed by politicians. This is now their responsibility to come up with a decision on the ceasefire. The last issue, Madam Chair, attacks on healthcare facilities in recent years started from Afghanistan, where Kunduz Hospital was bombed, continued in Syria, in Ukraine, and now what we hear is a common story in Gaza. What I propose today to EB is this item should be included in the agenda of our upcoming meeting in January to make sure that we get the opportunity to have an extensive discussion on it and come up with a possible resolution on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Afghanistan. I now give the floor to Rwanda, followed by China.
Chair, Director General Dr. Tedros, Excellencies, fellow Executive Board members, heads of delegations, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a long day and hard work, preceded by collective efforts by several delegations that worked tirelessly in the spirit of reaching a consensual outcome. I would like to appreciate the flexibility that we have seen in the room, thanks to your efforts, both individually and collectively. The Executive Board has been able to reach a consensual outcome. The resolution that we just adopted by consensus is a testimony that the good tradition that the Executive Board should always uphold. I highly appreciate updates provided earlier this morning by the WHO Secretariat, as well as the work as to continue to carry forward to respond to health emergencies in such difficult situations. As the Executive Board members, we must look forward to receiving regular updates from the Secretariat and also on the implementation of this resolution. Once again, thank you Executive Board members, member states in WHO Secretariat, under the leadership of Dr. Tedros for today's milestone. For those staying here in Geneva, I wish you a pleasant stay. For those like me traveling back home, to reach your countries safely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rwanda. I now give the floor to China, followed by Slovakia.
谢谢主席女士。中方欢迎今天会议通过的决议草案，也赞赏各成员国为寻求共识所做的不懈努力和体现的必要灵活。通向和平的步子再小也值得鼓励，保护平民的困难再大也应当努力克服。中方欢迎一切有利于促成停火、缓解局势的努力。巴勒斯坦经济、民生、健康需求应该得到保障。国际社会应该加大对巴勒斯坦发展援助和人道主义帮扶。今天通过的决议有利于实现这一目标，有助于世卫组织等联合国机构倾听国际社会的呼声，结合地面形势发展，及时采取进一步行动，在其职责范围内继续开展应对工作。基于上述考虑，中方联署了本决议草案。中方将继续同有关各方加强协调，推动巴勒斯坦问题得到全面、公正、持久的解决。中方呼吁国际社会，特别是在巴以问题上有影响力的国家，切实发挥负责作用，推动全面、持久停火，切实保护平民生存权和健康权。谢谢主席女士。
Thank you, China. I now give the floor to Slovakia, followed by Paraguay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Slovakia, respectively, I would like to appreciate flexibility in the room for reaching the consensus. But in the same time, I would like also to recall the definition of the health, which is stated in the preamble of WHO's constitution, provides the definition which, let us listen together. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And we know that all the conflicts and humanitarian needs are going beyond this definition and are captured in particular pieces. So I would like to request WHO Secretariat to help us as soon as possible to understand what will be the best mechanism for the coordination, to be more aligned and to be more united, to have better reflection, quicker proactive action for the future events, and to react and not just to sit and wait for this kind of events. This should not be a precedent, but we have to be really prepared as an organization, as member states, but also as the community to react for any future potential event which requires humanitarian assistance to act appropriately. And therefore, I hope that WHO Secretariat will circulate the proposal for consideration latest in January for us to be really somewhere else, not just sitting in the room and approving some papers with no implication for other conflicts. Related to approved consensus, for which we are grateful for, definitely there will be better language needed to capture all the necessary requests and demand in the fields. But for now, we would like to really appreciate this effort and congratulate to everybody that this is the first step, but I hope that we will not meet again for such unfortunate situations. Thank you all.
Thank you, Slovakia. I give now the floor to Paraguay.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta. Quisiera hacer un comentario breve para aclarar la posición de mi país. Para nosotros, la resolución aprobada, aunque mejora mucho la primera versión que tuvimos sobre la mesa, sigue careciendo de balance porque no cita aspectos importantes de la problemática, no cita a los rehenes que siguen cautivos en manos de Hamas, no hace referencia a los ataques del 7 de octubre, ni tampoco a la población de Israel, que es una contraparte víctima de esta situación. Pero nos sumamos al consenso con satisfacción, porque pensamos que es una resolución que representa un primer paso en la dirección correcta, que es la de poner a la población civil en primer lugar. Esperamos que en el futuro la amplitud que se ha demostrado sirva para considerar otras dimensiones y aristas de esta problemática. Gracias.
Thank you, Paraguay. As we have come to the end of the session for today, I would like to now give the floor to those delegations that requested to exercise their right of reply. I would like to request that in delivering a right to reply, delegations should be as brief as possible, taking no more than 2 minutes. I give the floor to the United States of America, followed by Palestine.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. One of the states in the room accused Israel of genocide and war crimes in the context of the national statement. I'd just like to reiterate this is not genocide, and to call it that is to distort the term beyond recognition. Hamas actually does have genocidal intentions against the people of Israel. Have said so explicitly that they would like to see Israel wiped off the map, and they said they would like to wipe it away on purpose. On war crimes, we've been clear about Israel's inherent right to defend itself, as well as the obligation to abide by international law and protect civilian lives, whether they are Israeli or Palestinian. As we all know, Hamas is using Palestinians as human shields in dense population centers, which creates extra challenges for Israel. Hamas wants to continue this fight, to continue to try to slaughter Israeli civilians, to continue to use the people of Gaza and prolong their suffering. Hamas is a terrorist organization, and Israel has the right to defend itself against these terrorists in order to protect its people, while complying with international humanitarian law, including the obligation to protect civilians. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to take the floor.
Thank you, United States of America. I now give the floor to Palestine.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. رغم أن هناك كان طلب قبلي، لكن أنتم تؤكدوا أن فلسطين دوما قبلا وقبل إسرائيل بالتأكيد. شكرا. يعني بداية أود أن أتوجه بالشكر والتقدير لكل الذين ساهموا بالنقاش والحوار حول التوصل إلى هذه الصيغة التي نرى أنها أقل من الحد الأدنى المطلوب، ولكن حفاظاً على هذه المنظمة وعلى مجلسكم الموقر قبلنا بما هو وارد. لكن أريد أن أوضح بعض القضايا. أرجو وأنا أستمع حزين وأنا أستمع إلى عدد من الدول، أنتم تحاولوا أن تبرروا قتل الأطفال والأطفال الخدج والنساء وكبار السن وتدمير غزة بسبب 7 أكتوبر. لا يجوز هذه المقارنة. تدين ذلك، لا أعترض، لكن لا يجوز أن تبقوا صامتين على مقتل 17,500 مدني، 70% منهم أطفال ونساء وشيوخ. والبعض يعني في أحسن أحواله يقول أنه يطالب إسرائيل بالالتزام بالقانون. تعلمون أن إسرائيل منذ نشأتها لم تلتزم بالقانون حتى اليوم. يعني أعتقد أن هذا لا يفيد إذا ما أردنا أن نسير إلى الأمام تحت يافطة القانون الدولي. وأرجو أن لا يكون الكذب والادعاءات الغير صحيحة للجانب الإسرائيلي هي برنامج. أعطيكم مثلا، يعني هذا متعلق بعملنا بمنظمة الصحة. المستشفيات أعطوا انطباع بأنها يعني الشفاء وكأنه البنتاغون. دخلوا للشفاء، ماذا وجدتم؟ ماذا لاحظتم على الشاشات؟ بعض الأسلحة الرشاشات وعدد من الطلقات بنفس الغرفة وبجنب جهاز الرنين المغناطيسي. نحن في منظمة الصحة عدد كبير من الأطباء والخبراء. الرنين المغناطيسي السكانر يعني في موجات راديو وحقل مغناطيسي، إذا وضعت أي قطعة حديد بجنبه سينفجر. يعني إذا أردتم أن تكذبوا حاولوا أن تتقنوا الكذبة ولا تستمروا بهذه الطريقة.
Can you please conclude the statement, please? Can you please conclude? You're past the time of 2 minutes.
Okay. يعني فقط يعني إنه موضوع قضية الاستهداف للقطاع الصحي الغير مبرر يجب أن يتوقف. وأطلب من المدير العام ومنظمة الصحة في تقريرهم أن يتحققوا من كل هذه الادعاءات، وعلينا أن نحافظ على حقوق الناس في صحتها وعلى الأطفال، وأن يتوقف شلال الدم وهذه المجزرة وهذه الإبادة التي نعيشها على مدار 65 يوم. شكرا.
شكرا فلسطين. I now give the floor to Israel.
Thank you. I would just like to reiterate that this is an explanation of position that we've requested. I understand that the sign was not seen, and then we would separately ask for an RR. The decision that was just adopted only confirms what I've said in my earlier statement. The session today and the decision adopted had no intention of truly addressing the complex reality. There were many calls today for a ceasefire. However, there can be a ceasefire tomorrow if Hamas releases our hostages and surrenders, rather than keep calling for another October 7th. Let me remind you that the operational pause in hostilities ended when Hamas violated its part of the agreement by not releasing women, all women and children. Focusing on Israel only encourages Hamas to continue using the civilian population and medical installations as human shields. Obviously, it has been working for them for everything that I've heard today. The decision adopted here has no reference to Hamas or its systematic strategy of using medical facilities for its terrorist infrastructure. What is unbelievable and unacceptable is that this decision on health does not address the hostages still held in Gaza. It does not mention the 137 hostages, men, women, children, babies, and elderly. It does not demand their immediate release, nor it demands that they have access to medical treatment. We know some of them were murdered while in captivity, yet the decision remains silent. This is a moral failure of this body to address this important situation. Some of you referred to the hostages in your statement. I thank you, but this is simply not good enough. The families of the hostages, the people of Israel, the government of Israel cannot accept a decision of the World Health Organization that does not address the plight of the hostages and their conditions. As far as the text of this decision, they do not even exist. Dynamics of negotiations are irrelevant. The desire to reach a consensus at all costs, including by ignoring the hostage situation, is simply unacceptable. Regardless of the session today, Israel will continue to facilitate humanitarian aid, to strengthen existing medical capacities, and to work with all partners to address the health needs of Palestinian population. As I said earlier, Israel will continue to fight terrorism, and we will defeat Hamas. We will bring our hostages home.
Thank you, Israel. You mentioned you would like to also make the right to reply. Would you like to make that now? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. I would like to exercise our right of reply to statements made by the Iranian regime and others. It is tragically ironic that the Iranian regime declares its willingness to support the health system of Gaza while it continues to support Hamas, the terrorist organization that is responsible for all the suffering currently in Gaza. The Iranian regime, the biggest exporter of terrorism in the region, is also a supporter of Hezbollah, its proxy in Lebanon. Hezbollah is responsible for launching many hundreds of rockets, anti-tank missiles, and mortar shells from Lebanon since October 8th, without provocation or justification, and poses a direct and imminent threat of regional escalation. If the Iranian regime is so concerned with the welfare of the Palestinian people, rest assured it is not. Perhaps it should cease to support, train, and fund Hamas so the Palestinian people may be able to have a better future free from the terrorist organization that exploits them. To those who labeled Israel's operation as vengeful, the absurdity has no bounds. Don't listen to me. I urge you to listen to Hamas declarations. They say that October 7th was a dress rehearsal. They declare their intention to carry out further massacres. They said that they are willing to sacrifice all the people of Gaza to this end. What exactly is vengeful in defending our population against another massacre? What dialogue can be conducted with this terrorist organization? Indeed, the irony appears to be the order of the day. To the delegation of Syria and Pakistan who are so concerned about the health situation in Gaza, I ask, how did Syria address the health issues of its own citizens against whom they used chemical weapons? How did Pakistan address the health issue of 1.7 million Afghan refugees that it expelled? To those who raised erroneous claims of genocide, unfortunately, we know what genocide looks like. And we were reminded again on October 7th when the genocidal terrorist organization Hamas went on a gleeful murder spree. It will not happen again. We will not be preached by the greatest exporters of terrorism, supporters of terrorism, violators of humanitarian law and human rights. There will be no peace for Israelis and Palestinians as long as Hamas exists. This is clear. Israel will continue to exercise its right of self-defense in accordance with the international law. Thank you.
Thank you, Israel. And I give the floor to Palestine. This is the second right of reply, Palestine, so I believe it's a little bit shorter. It's 30 seconds. This is, please go ahead. Do you have the floor, Palestine?
20 seconds, how?
That's the rule.
Also in this issue, Palestine always, please.
It's the second right of reply.
The representative of the occupying power, she spoke 6 minutes, all in all. So why 20 seconds? Tell me.
She spoke five.
I have my phone. I have my phone. Okay.
She spoke.
But
Doctor, no, just let me clarify that. She spoke 3 minutes as position, followed by 2 minutes for reply. Yeah. And now, as a second reply, is 30 seconds. Please, Palestine.
Two, three issues only. حول حق تقرير المصير، يعني كفى هذا الموضوع. لا يوجد شيء اسمه حق عفوا الدفاع عن النفس، لا يوجد شيء اسمه حق الدفاع عن النفس لإسرائيل بصفتها قوة قامة بالاحتلال. هذا الأمر واضح في المادة 51 من ميثاق الأمم المتحدة وفي الرأي الاستشاري الذي صدر لمحكمة العدل الدولية عام 2004. وإذا كان هناك حق دفاع عن النفس كما تقول، أعتقد حق دفاع عن النفس ليس ضد الأطفال الخدج. الموضوع الآخر تتحدث عن الدروع البشرية. مستشفى الأهلي 500 مدني قتلوا ولا زال هناك ادعاء بأن من قام بذلك حماس. لو كان حماس عندها فقط هذه القذيفة التي تم إطلاقها على الشفا ولم تستخدم هذه القذائف في أماكن أخرى، كلام هذا غير صحيح وغير دقيق. وحماس جاءت بسبب الاحتلال. وسمعت قبل قليل أيضا واستمعتم معي إلى ممثلة القوى القائمة بالاحتلال بأن سنسمح وسمحنا. الحق في الصحة ليس حق لكم أن تقرروا. هذه هي العقلية التي نعمل معها. سنسمح بإدخال شاحنتين من الأدوية وسنسمح بتنقل بعض المرضى، وهذا كان قبل 7 أكتوبر وليس هذه المعاناة مر عليها 56 عام. الذي يحصل في منطقتنا لم يبدأ تاريخه يوم 7 أكتوبر. 56 عام من الاحتلال، 18 عام من الحصار، 75 عام من المعاناة. استفيقوا قليلا حتى نستطيع أن نستمر. وما عملناه هنا معكم في هذا المكان لنبقي هذه المنظمة وهذا المجلس وباقي المؤسسات على أساس القواعد القانونية التي أنشئت من أجلها. ما يتم الآن هو ازدواجية معايير وضرب لكل هذه المعايير، وستكون يعني حالة غريبة أقل ما يمكن وصفها بشريعة غاب. شكرا.
شكرا فلسطين. I now give the floor to Iran, followed by Syrian Arab Republic. You each have 2 minutes for your right of reply. But I would like to remind you to please stick to health-related issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing my delegation to exercise its rights of reply. In this special session, what have been expressed by a wide range of member states as well as NSAs was an alarming reminder about the brutality of the Israeli regime, even though some of the Israeli supporters are still shying away recognizing the scale of the brutality. The Israeli regime cannot evade accountability by falsely blaming Iran. This apartheid regime is undeniably responsible for the tragic loss of innocent lives resulting from its ongoing atrocities against civilians in Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you, Iran. I now give the floor to the Syrian Arab Republic. You have 2 minutes, but I would like to remind everybody that we have reached consensus and we've made good progress. Let us please make the rights to reply short, concise, and health-related. Thank you.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. يقول المثل العربي: إن لم تستحي فافعل ما شئت. الحق واضح والباطل واضح، ولا نحتاج لاختراع الدولاب مرة أخرى. إن السبب الرئيسي لهذه الجلسة ولجلسات مجلس الأمن ولنداءات الأمين العام ولنداءات المدير العام ولكافة جلسات الأمم المتحدة وما يجري في كافة مدن العالم، السبب الرئيسي لذلك هو استمرار الاحتلال الإسرائيلي والجرائم الممنهجة التي يرتكبها هذا الكيان بحق الشعب الفلسطيني. آن للمذبحة الإسرائيلية للفلسطينيين أن تتوقف، وآن الاعتداءات الإسرائيلية الجبانة على سوريا وعلى جنوب لبنان وعلى فلسطين أن تتوقف. إن سعي سلطات الاحتلال الإسرائيلي المأزومة لتصعيد الأوضاع في المنطقة ومواصلة سياسة الهروب إلى الأمام للتغطية على جرائمها وهزائمها أصبح مكشوف للجميع في ظل إخفاقها في تحقيق الأهداف التي أعلنتها لعدوانها الوحشي على غزة، وذلك على الرغم من ارتكابها أفظع الجرائم وأعمال الإبادة، والتي أبرزت كلها مجددا الحقيقة الوحشية لهذا الكيان الغاصب أمام الرأي العام العالمي. شكرا السيد الرئيس.
Shukran, Surya. I now give the floor to Pakistan. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I only take the floor to place accurate facts before the House. Refugees in Pakistan have had unrestricted access to health facilities for over 40 years, and that Pakistan has not expelled 1.7 million refugees. Thank you.
Thank you, Pakistan. I now give the floor to Lebanon. Lebanon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing Lebanon to exercise its right to reply. I will be very brief. Lebanon rejects the accusations of the representative of the occupying power, Israel, about Hezbollah, which is a Lebanese political party and part of the Lebanese resistance, and we condemn the constant Israeli aggressions on our sovereignty, aggressions that increased since the starting of the bloody war on Gaza. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Lebanon. Thank you, everyone. This concludes our consideration of Agenda Item 3. We shall now consider Agenda Item 4, closure of the meeting. Distinguished delegates, we have now come to the end of the special session of the Executive Board. Before closing the meeting, I would like to invite the Director General to say a few words. Dr. Tedros, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, Minister Hanan Mohammed Al-Kuwari, Chair of the Executive Board. Your Excellency, Minister Sabin Sanazimana, Vice Chair of the Executive Board. Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, I thank Member States for the resolution you have adopted. You have achieved something that so far Member States have not achieved in other fora. The first consensus resolution on the conflict in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory since it began 2 months ago. I know it was not easy, but it was worth it. I thank all of you for the spirit in which you have worked, and I commend you once again for being willing to collaborate and compromise. You have shown that in our fractured and divided world, it's still possible to find common ground on even the most difficult issues. Of course, the adoption of this resolution is only a starting point. It does not resolve the crisis, but it's a platform on which to build. I understand the Israelis need to protect its people from further and future attacks and to live in peace and security. And I likewise understand the need of the Palestinian people to live in peace and freedom. We must continue to believe that both are possible and are not mutually exclusive. I give you my commitment that I and my colleagues will implement the resolution to the best of our ability. But I reiterate that in the current context, sustained humanitarian assistance at the scale needed is simply not possible. Without a ceasefire, there is no peace. And without peace, there is no help. I urge all member states, especially those with the most influence, to work with urgency to bring an end to this conflict as soon as possible. I reiterate my call for the release of the remaining Israeli hostages who are being held in Gaza. I once again call for health care to be protected proactively and not attacked. And I continue to call for all parties to facilitate rapid, safe, and unhindered access for humanitarian aid and humanitarian workers. Excellencies, one day, hopefully sooner than later, the guns will fall silent and the bombs will stop falling from the sky. But the scars, physical and psychological, will remain. For Palestinians, as they will for Israelis following the October 7 attacks. WHO and our partners inside and outside the UN family remain committed to promoting, providing, and protecting the health of the people of Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory. We will continue to support Gaza's incredible health workers to treat the sick and wounded. We will continue to work with our partners to deliver aid where and when we can. And we will continue to remind the world that there is no health without peace and no peace without health. As always, the medicine that the people of Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory need the most is not one we can deliver in a truck or administer in a syringe. It's the most precious medicine, and often the most rare hope. I thank you, and Chair, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tedros. I would like to thank the EB members, member states, all participants, the Director General and his staff. Before making my closing remarks, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Tim for some housekeeping.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just simply to say that delegations, as you know, we did make provision for an evening session tonight, which obviously, due to the consensus that has been reached, will not be required. However, the sandwiches that were made available in the event of that meeting will be outside. Please take them, otherwise they are wasted. So, a very light evening snack. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, at the closure of this important special session of the EB, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each country present here today for the approval of this important resolution. Your collective support underscores the urgent need to safeguard the sanctity of health facilities and protect the invaluable healthcare workers serving tirelessly, often in the line of conflict, to deliver vital care to those in need. This resolution also reaffirms our support to the World Health Organization in its attempt to preserving healthcare services in conflict zones and provide the necessary humanitarian aid to civilian populations in such areas. In light of the significant resolution, I call upon all member states to not only endorse, but actively support the World Health Organization in its noble pursuit of safeguarding the health and well-being of our global community. This resolution reflects our collective determination to ensure that healthcare remains a universal right, even in the most challenging circumstances. I urge each and every nation represented here to join hands and collaborate closely in implementing this resolution. Only through unified action can we effectively translate these commitments into tangible actions that will protect health workers and guarantee access to essential health services for all affected populations. Together, let us demonstrate our collective commitments in the pursuit of a world where the right to health is upheld and where health workers are shielded from harm as they fulfill their noble duty of saving lives. Thank you very much. I now declare the special session of the Executive Board closed. Thank you.
Rotherham Radio Weather.
Rotherham Radio Weather.
Rotherham Radio Weather. Rotherham Radio Weather.